of 2016. And so, Dr. Baldwin, let's pick up where we left off. And this is our final segment. I think we've got about 9 minutes in this segment. But let's try to give our audience as much information as you can possibly give them concerning what we have to do and how we ought to react to this movement. And make it serious, because this is a serious...
Yes, I think we have to react on a number of levels. This movement, of course, uses, as I said, the websites, social media, to advance its ideals, its values, its ideologies. So what we have to do is to use social media also to counter this kind of movement. We also have to appeal to our political leaders like Hillary Clinton and others, Democratic Party, Republican Party, to really face what's happening. Hillary Clinton made this speech, I think, back on August 16th about the alt-right, trying to warn us about what's happening in terms of its program of anti-immigrationism and anti-diversity and anti-multiculturalism. So what we have to do is to take this seriously. I don't think we are very serious about our response at this point about what's going on. We need to understand that what is happening with the alt-right is really a normalization of hate speech. And not only a normalization of hate speech, but the idea of bringing some intellectual respectability to hate speech and white supremacist rhetoric. And that's not what we are about in this country. We are a country that resulted from a melting pot of races and ethnic groups. Blacks, African people, Asian people, Latinos, European peoples. And we need to understand that that's what we are about. That's who we are. And if we understand that, I think we will counter any movement or oppose any movement that seeks to divide us on the basis of race and ethnicity and religion, which is what the alt-right movement is about. We are facing a challenge. And if we don't deal with that challenge through social media, the internet, through our politics, etc., then we'll go back, I think, to the 1920s and 30s in terms of race relations.
Do you believe, Dr. Baldwin, that this is the most serious threat that we've had against American democracy since emancipation?
Exactly. I think this is the most serious threat. I think the most serious threat to our existence as a nation is internal. We talk a lot about ISIS and the external threats with Islamic terrorism, and that is a threat. But I think the greatest threat to our survival as a nation is internal. And it results from the alternative right and from the more radical right-wing, conservative, extremist movements that are against diversity, that are promoting white supremacy, xenophobia, anti-Semitism. I think that's our greatest threat. Nations, great civilizations are often destroyed from within, not from without. So we have to be concerned about what's going on in our society, and while realizing also that there are external threats.
And so in a real sense, we've never had to really face anything like this alternative right, and especially its ability to sort of move into the regular political organizations, the regular political parties. All other times, these were generally third-party movements and et cetera, and et cetera.
Fringe movements.
The fringe movements.
Yeah.
But this movement has somehow climbed into into the political process, and it sort of considers itself one of the two major political parties.
Exactly.
It appears to me.
Not only the political processes, but as I said earlier, law enforcement, criminal justice system. We see the penetration of this alt-right movement at all levels, and if we're not careful, we will destroy ourselves. Not forget about it, but we have to understand that the greatest threat to our survival and welfare as a nation may not be ISIS, may not be external terrorism. It might be the kind of domestic terrorism. and the kind of extremism that exists within our own nation.
And that's becoming more and more apparent.
Exactly.
And sometimes some of the things that you would have thought would never be possible prior to the last year and a half now seems to be something that could possibly happen unless we are resolute in terms of how we try to. What should we do now? In terms
I do think that we need to take seriously what politicians like Hillary Clinton are telling us about the alt-right. We need to also appeal to the white community to become more conscious of what's going on and to use the resources of that community to counter what's going on. See, people of color cannot deal with that issue alone. You have African Americans, you have Latino Americans, you have Asian Americans, and all are potentially targets of the alt-right because they are against diversity. They are against multiculturalism. And what we have to do is to call all Americans to the task of speaking out against any form of intolerance and bigotry, which is what the alt-right movement is about. We should speak out against the restoration of any kind of white supremacist doctrine or white supremacist practices. And I think we all have a responsibility, a moral responsibility in that regard. And I think our greatest challenge is to get the white communities of this country to understand that this alt-right movement poses a threat to American democracy. And that they too have a role in terms of undermining that movement and virtually, in the end, eliminating it from
And for those who might assume that this movement is only anti-immigrant and anti-black and et cetera, have to recognize that if they come into force, that it's going to be anti-white.
And it's anti-American.
For those who believe in it.
It's anti-American because our values really, constitutionally speaking, has to do with what? Freedom, justice, and the pursuit of happiness for all people. And you can't have that with a movement that preaches white supremacy, that embraces nativism.